What's going on, everybody? Back again today to bring you guys a bit of a review, bit of a discussion video. Today we're talking about this fan-made short film called To the Death, and this is made by Corridor. And these guys, they say they wanted to reinvent the concept of the lightsaber. Uh, this has been done a lot. A lot of people talk about this, and a lot of people have their varying explanations for how a lightsaber should and should not work and blah blah blah. And then they also apply the lore of Star Wars, like, oh, the Jedi and the Sith, like they have the Force, so that plays a role in how the lightsaber fights are fought. To me, my idea for what a lightsaber duel or fight should be is it should be, in fact, a normal sword fight. Now, there's lightsabers are typically used with two hands, and there's different forms of two-handed swordsmanship. But I think like the two most that would work best would be like something like kendo, a mixture of kendo and then just like historical European martial arts with a long sword. Some combination of those two styles would probably be the best. Now, a normal sword fight, a proper lightsaber duel should be a normal sword fight, but it should take into account that the weapon is very, very light. You're holding a hilt that weighs a pound, maybe, and then the blade is weightless because it's just a blade of concentrated light. So the weapon is very lightweight, which means you do not need to swing it really hard. And the only time you should be like someone wielding a lightsaber should be putting any kind of force into their strikes is if the thing that they are trying to hit will resist the blade. But as we've seen in Star Wars, human flesh and bone does not resist a lightsaber blade very well. So when they're dueling another person, they should be they should not have to strike very hard unless that person's wearing armor, and especially with the Jedi, since it's supposed to be like, wound them or disarm them before outright killing them. Well, then they would be making very light cuts anyway. So it does not need to be, you do not need to swing very hard or very, big heavy strikes. You don't need that because it's a very lightweight weapon. And then also, like I said, you have to take into the account that, like, unlike a sword, this is a blade of energy. It's a blade of concentrated light. So almost any strike could be a killing blow. You know what I mean? It's like certain sword fights or certain strikes with an actual sword, like on the wrist or the forearm, if they nick you with their blade, it's going to cut you and it's going to draw blood. With a lightsaber, it might just outright lop your arm off. Just a slight, boop, just a little boop, might just take your arm off at the mid forearm. Whereas with a normal metal bladed sword, it would probably just cut you. You probably wouldn't outright lose the arm, but who knows? So yeah, that's my definition of a proper lightsaber duel. Now, at the beginning of Star Wars, when George Lucas first started making them, he had in his mind this is a very heavy, powerful weapon. Why he thought it would be heavy, I don't know. Probably because like most filmmakers, he's a artsy fartsy, ditzy, creative, imaginative guy. And he didn't apply logic and reasoning to it because logic and reasoning is not the strong suit of artsy fartsy, ditzy creator people. I'm not trying to insult George Lucas. I'm glad he did what he did. I'm glad he gave us Star Wars. But it's this attitude of like why should how do I put this? It's this attitude of like ignoring logic and logical reasoning that's why we get shitty lightsaber duels, and that's why we get scenes like in The Last Jedi where they drop bombs in space where there is no gravity. So yeah, like it I get it. Like the creative, imaginative people of the world, they don't like rules because rules create boundaries and then boundaries restrict their creativity and their imagination. But rules and boundaries are also it's what logic and critical thinking is reason is you understand what I'm trying to say? Like you got to have some rules, you got to have some boundaries, you got to have some guidelines, you got to have some standards, and you got to play within those, or else nothing's going to make fucking sense. So, but when things make sense, it infringes. Anyway, it infringes on our creativeness. We don't give a shit. We want some sense and order to our fandoms. Don't we like the fantasy and the fantastical, but we also want some order. My favorite line in Force Awakens is when Finn's just like, "We'll use the Force," and Han's like, "That's not how the Force works." I loved it. I loved it. Anyway, so yeah, as we moved into the prequel trilogy, episodes 1, 2, and 3, George Lucas had this idea of like, okay, so lightsaber fights in this trilogy. This is the Jedi in their prime. So lightsaber fights should be faster, and these are like expert swordsmen. They're very attuned with the Force. So lightsaber fights should be faster and fancier. I don't know, like you watch some of the lightsaber duels in the prequel trilogy, and they're definitely fancier. There's a lot of flippy and twirly bullshit, and yeah, none of it is quality swordsmanship, but to a child or someone with a childlike mind, you see these guys, these warriors with science fantasy warriors with these colorful energy blades, and they're twirling them around and doing cool flips and shit like it's a fucking anime, and you're sitting there with your child brain just going, ooh, pretty colors and fancy movements and shit, and you don't stop to fucking apply the logic and the reasoning of like, that dude is not, he swung at him, but he was nowhere near close enough to the guy to hit him. Like they're not aiming for each other, they're aiming for each other's blades. And that dude had a perfect opportunity to cut him in the back when he was doing that spinny twirly move, or he had the opportunity to cut his legs off when he was doing a backflip. It's just shit you notice. There's a scene in the third fight, episode 3, between Obi-Wan and Anakin, where they both for like 5 seconds straight just twirl their blades and then epically clash them together. So cinematic, so cool, but it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. So it's just really annoying. Like, it seems like in this day and age, nothing is made for the adult nerd. Someone who still likes the fictional, the science fiction and the fantasy, but they also have an mature adult mind, and they want shit to have some level of logic and reasoning to it. It seems like these days it's like, okay, if you're gonna be into sci-fi fantasy nonsense, you have to be prepared for just that complete nonsense. And I'm like, no, like you can take this shit seriously. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is lightsaber duels have never been that great, in my opinion. Not the way that I thought they should be. So right now, we're gonna watch a tiny snippet of this To the Death short film, just to show you these guys. They said they're gonna reinvent the lightsaber. They didn't reinvent it. They just did it right. They got a real swordsmanship expert to come in and choreograph them a lightsaber duel that is the way it would be. It's real swordsmanship techniques, but they take into account the fact that the blade is very light. It's a very lightweight weapon, and it doesn't take much to just like really lop someone's arm off. It doesn't take much at all. So they take those things into account. They take into account the things about a lightsaber that make it a lightsaber, but then also apply real swordsmanship techniques to it, and it results in the best lightsaber duel I've ever seen, hands down. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at this short little bit.
You need two things to win a sword fight. Perfect distance at the right time. Right now, the teacher controls both. If the student doesn't start forcing opportunities, he's going to get cut.
He's nervous.
He's scared. Your body doesn't want to cooperate when you're scared.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Missy, this school's fucked up.
So yeah, that was just a little bit of the choreography that they used in that little short film. And here's where it differs to me from most lightsaber fights. it is think about the space that those two combatants are fighting in. It's just a room, and to be honest, they don't even use up the whole room. It's almost like they're fighting in this very narrow, this very small circle, almost like a line. They're fighting on a line. They go back and forth this way, like a 2D, old school 2D fighting game. You know what I mean? Uh, that was perfect. That's a real sword fight. They weren't jumping and flipping all over the place. They weren't twirling their lightsaber all the which way. They weren't running and leaping across the whole room. Now, there's going to be some people out there I know who are just like, yeah, but that was actually kind of boring. I mean, can you imagine if every lightsaber fight was like that? It would just be, every duel would be the same. Yeah, because that's how sword fights are. Like, look, no one alive right now in 2021 was alive back when sword fights were common. But I can probably tell you, I feel safe saying this. They all probably were very similar to one another. Anytime two people dueled each other with two-handed swords, it probably looked similar to every other time that two people dueled each other with two-handed swords. Because there's only so much, it's a fucking sword duel. There's only so much that can happen. Then you get the film industry, though, and they're like, yeah, but we got to spice it up and make it new and make it so that people want to come. Got to give them something new to see. That's all well and good when the new thing that you're giving us doesn't make us go, what? What the fuck is that? What is this shit? What are you doing? If your new creative thing that you add to the movie, it makes us go, oh, damn, that was awesome, then it was justified. But if you add something new to the movie to try and like spice things up and keep it fresh, and it results in your audience going, what the fuck was that? Why? What? What the fuck was that? Then you failed. You failed, and your addition to the movie was shit. Accept that and move the fuck on. And that's the thing, it's like with lightsaber duels, it's like people have been bitching about how lightsaber duels are actually pretty shitty for a while. Like the only one in any of the films that has some level of redeemability to it is Luke versus Vader in Empire Strikes Back. That is a pretty decent sword fight. Obi-Wan versus Vader in New Hope is not bad. It's just that was their first outing. It was their first time doing a Star Wars film. It was their first time doing a lightsaber duel. So it was kind of trial and error. And then on top of that is like Bob Anderson was trying to duel Alec Guinness in this like big clunky Darth Vader suit, and Alec Guinness is an older man. So by the time they got around to the next movie, which was Empire Strikes Back, they had Mark Hamill doing the sword fight. He's a young dude in pretty good physical shape. And then they'd also had, this was their second time around, they'd learned from the last movie, and they developed techniques and stuff to make it look better and be better. So that one is a redeeming sword fight in Empire Strikes Back. Everything else, though, is relatively shitty. Arguably, Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi is not much of a duel. Like, for the most part, Luke is not trying to fight him at all. Luke is like, I don't want to fight you, Father. And Vader's just kind of forcing him to here and there. And Luke keeps trying to back away and get out of the fight until finally Vader says the shit about Leia that pisses him off. And after that, it's not much of a sword fight either, because then it's just Luke just going in hard with like just boundless rage, and he's just fucking beating away at Vader until he finally just beats him down and cuts his hand off. So yeah, the only real sword fight with redeemable qualities is the one in Empire Strikes Back between Luke and Vader. But it's like they accomplished it one time, and then for the prequel movies and the sequel trilogy, they just completely abandoned all of that and were like, nope, special effects, flippy jumps, backflips, twirly twirls. Why? Did we not see what? Did you all not see what I just saw? And here's the thing, it's like, whatever location the two combatants find themselves in, they are going to use up a minimum amount of space within that space. Like you saw in the video, those two guys were dueling in a decent sized room. The amount of space in that room that they're using up for their duel is minimal. That always should be the case. Whatever space the combatants find themselves in, they should be using a minimum amount of that space as part of their duel. But that doesn't mean that throughout the fight scene they cannot change location. Like you saw in Empire Strikes Back, Vader and Luke, their duel initially, they're in the carbon freezing chamber. Their duel is right there on that platform. They're in a big chamber. It doesn't take place throughout the whole chamber. It's right there on that platform until Luke kicks Vader down off the ledge, and then at which point they kind of have to like meet back up and find each other. And when they do, it's in that little hallway. At this point, though, it's not much of a sword duel because very early on, Vader starts using his force powers to just throw shit at Luke and knock him out the window. And then they meet up for the third time, which is on the railing that leads to the platform where Luke gets his hand cut off. And their fight is just, like I said, it's on a line. Once again, the line is that railing platform. And they just duel across that line. Back and forth a little bit, and Vader keeps pushing Luke back and back and back until he finally cuts his hand off. So the combatant's location where they are fighting can change, but whatever location they are in, they should be using a minimum amount of space in that area. They should not be jumping and running and leaping all over the goddamn room. They should be standing on their 2 fucking feet and fighting. So there's another part in this video that I want to show off here. At one point, the combatant in this duel who is using a blue lightsaber, he starts to get kind of cocky. All right, here, let's show some more. I'm gonna do it in chunks though. All right, so here we go. Another little bit.
He's conquering his fear.
Whoopsie. So you saw there in that little bit, like the guy with the blue saber, he's getting a little too aggressive and too angry, and he's doing these big, choppy, heavy swings. And he doesn't need to. And it actually gets him in trouble because you see he raises up really high to do a big, powerful strike, and the guy just stabs him right in the chest. Like, that was accurate. That was 100% accurate. Let's watch a little bit more. There's a part we got to get to in this. That's what I was talking about with the whole how it, unless it's like some kind of armor plating or some kind of substance that would resist the lightsaber blades go through most shit, especially human flesh and bone. So that dude, he blocked, and then with just a little like floop, just took both of his hands right off. It shouldn't take much. That was accurate. I liked that as well.
Now he just needs to temper his attitude.
So I'm not going to show the ending of the video here because it's definitely worth watching. You should definitely go check it out on YouTube. I will put a link below in the description, so definitely go check that out. This is top notch. This is exactly the way lightsaber duels in Star Wars should be. Obviously, the parts where he gets his hands cut off, or the parts where he's doing the big swings and he raises up for a big swing and just gets poked in the chest. And then the last one you just saw there where he does the fancy twirl and he just gets cut through the gut. Those were in there to kind of like poke fun at modern Star Wars lightsaber duels, to kind of be like, hey guys, you've been fucking up. We all know you've been fucking up. It's this fucking obvious right here. Look at this shit. It's this obvious how fucking stupid your sword fights are in your movies. So fuck you, get better. Yeah, so that kind of stuff, the stuff that's in there to poke fun at modern Star Wars sword fights, lightsaber fights, That's not what I'm referring to, obviously, when I say that this is perfect. What I'm talking about is like that very first little bit that we watched when they were both really trying. That is, that's proper lightsaber duel. That's what that is. And then the ending, the next part you're gonna see here, well, not here, but the next part that comes up after that, where he just got cut in the gut. The next part is it's pretty good. He kind of like before he starts fighting, he kind of closes his eyes, takes a deep breath, he centers himself, and then they really duel. And it's a realistic sword fight, but they use real sword techniques, but they also take into account that this is not a normal sword. It is a lightsaber. It has some different properties. It's very, very, very low weight, and it doesn't take much for it to just cut right through damn near anything. So more of this in Star Wars, please. Now, another thing that I'm starting to see in Star Wars is armor. They're starting to really touch on the fact that, like, in the expanded universe and in deeper Star Wars lore, there has been armor that can resist a lightsaber blade. That's been around for a very long time. It's just never been featured heavily in a movie or any kind of Star Wars live action. The closest thing we ever saw was in Episode 1 at the beginning when Qui-Gon Jinn is trying to break into the bridge of that ship that they're on, and he has to like really drive his lightsaber into that door because they've sealed the blast doors, and he has to slowly drive his lightsaber in and twist it around to kind of like erode away the door to really get through it. Those big metal blast doors, it looked like it was implying like this is enough metal. It's either a certain type of metal to where it can resist his lightsaber, or it's just a thick enough sheet of it to where it can resist his lightsaber. That's the closest thing we had in all of Star Wars to their live action Star Wars anyway, to there being a reference of like armor that can resist lightsabers. And now we're seeing in the sequel trilogy, some of the stormtroopers had vibro weapons that could combat lightsabers. I liked that. That's fine. Uh, that was a nice change. And then also in Mandalorian, the Beskar armor, the Beskar steel, that can resist lightsabers. So what I'm seeing from that is this idea that like Disney and their Star Wars people that are working on Star Wars, they want to play around and do more with lightsabers, but they don't really like the idea of lightsabers being this like weapon that'll just kill people super easily. You know what I mean? They're like up until, the Mandalorian, like lightsabers were deadly. They're deadly things. You come away from a lightsaber fight severely wounded, missing a limb or multiple limbs at the very least, and or you're dead. I think the Obi-Wan versus Dooku fight in Episode 2 is the only time we really saw, but prior to the sequel trilogy, it was the only time we really saw someone get wounded and injured with a lightsaber and it didn't completely lop off a limb or kill them. So, but it looks like with the Beskar armor, the Beskar steel, Disney wants to kind of play around with the idea of like we want lightsabers we still want them to be cool, we just don't want them to be quite as lethal. We want people to have some kind of defense against them other than a lightsaber of their own. So, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine because realistically in our real world, what was people's answer to protect themselves from sword injuries? Fucking armor. So it makes total sense. Now, the only aspect of Star Wars lightsaber duels that this little fan-made short film did not address is the Force. The Force, when it plays into lightsaber duels, it enhances a Force user's intuition and their reflexes. It almost allows them, like, if they're really centered and then attuned with the Force, it allows them like a heightened level of awareness, almost like they see the fight through the Force. They can see the fight like 3 to 4 to 5 moves ahead. So that's why lightsaber duels are portrayed as very fast. It's because as much as they are using swordsmanship techniques to kind of like outmaneuver their opponent, they're also supposed to be using the force to try to get, it's almost like a chess match. Like they got to get 3 or 4 moves ahead of their opponent. You know what I mean? And they see that through the force, and it enhances their, but also the opponent also sees what they, not only what they should do themselves, the force helping to guide their actions, it also helps them see like what their opponent is going to do to retaliate, and then they got to think of a counter to that, and then the other one's got to think of a counter to that, and it ends up being this almost like fair, very physical chess match. But it's not slow. Like in a chess match, it's you take your turn, you take as much time as you need, then you hit the clock. I take my turn, I take as much time as I need, I hit the clock. This is boom, 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 boom. It's very fast, but that's because of the force. That's because the force is this fantasy magical thing that gives the Jedi and the Sith, all force users, this heightened level of like brain processing power, heightened levels of intuition, reflexes, your different senses. You can process things faster. It also helps to just guide their physical movements as well. So that was not really taken into account in this fan film. It was mostly just a sword fight. But really, in reality, when it comes to implementing that in a lightsaber fight scene in a Star Wars movie, between force users, if the people are not force users, it doesn't matter. All that means is that you have to increase the speed. So what would it look like if what would this fan movie have looked like if they were trying to incorporate the force into the duel? To me, all it means is that the duel would have been faster. Like you saw how fast they were swinging. If they had been trying to incorporate the force into this, it just means it would have been faster. They were kind of like boom, 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 boom. You know, if they were trying to incorporate some aspect of the force, it would have been boom, 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 boom. It would have been much faster. That's all that it means to me. So that's what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for in a Star Wars lightsaber duel is pretty much exactly what we saw in this video, but if it's between force users at a faster pace, like twice as fast, like double the speed. So yeah, that's my take on that. Please go check out this video. Link is in the description below. Let me know what you guys think. Who out there loves this and thinks that I'm right and thinks that this is the kind of lightsaber duels that we want to see? And then also, if you're a fan of the dumb, flippy, twirly, fancy, fuckery, fuck around bullshit, let me know if that's you as well. I don't care. Let's get a discussion started down in the comments below. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. That really helps out the channel. And another way you can help out the channel is to check out some of the other videos and maybe subscribe. Other than that, I will see you guys next time.